Welcome home. It's been a while since so many of us have actually been in this sanctuary together. So welcome home. It's nice to hear your voices again. Take a look around. It's changed a little bit. We've all changed a little bit, but it's still home. Maybe this is your first time in our sanctuary. Welcome home to you too. That's actually what my beloved Rabbi Jordan Perlson of blessed memory said to my father the first time he walked into Temple Sinai. Welcome home. And that was enough to get my family to join. Because everybody wants a home. Everyone wants a place to belong, to feel safe, supported, welcome, and at ease. At home. I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to be from a place. I've always been a proud Canadian Jew, especially when I'm outside the country. I feel pride in being Canadian, being loved by everyone from all countries, being welcomed and lauded for being peacemakers and generally polite people. This is a good thing. I always made sure when I was backpacking to have my Canadian flag sewn on my backpack because, you know, we don't want to be mistaken for anyone else. And truth be told, even though I grew up here and was educated in Canadian public schools and took two versions of Canadian history, moving from Ontario to Quebec, they made me retake it, don't ask, I still did not have the full picture of what Canada's history entailed. We learned about the French settling here, becoming coureurs de bois, establishing the fur trade, the Hudson's Bay Company, the English coming, fighting on the plains of Abraham, je me souviens, the establishment of Upper and Lower Canada, the War of 1812, Louis Riel, the establishment of the British North America Act. But I've come to realize that over these last few years, that there was an obvious gap in my education. One that has only come to light due to revelations over these past couple of years, as mass graves of Indigenous children have been found and more information has come to light about the residential school system. They didn't teach this in either of my history classes. In addition to condemning this barbaric practice and calling for those responsible to make restitution and truly engage in reconciliation, it has made me realize that this isn't really my home. I am not an Indigenous Canadian. I am not a descendant of those who oppressed and afflicted them, and I do not relish the thought that I have benefited from their barbaric practices. Canada once closed its doors to Jews, famously declaring none is too many as Jewish immigration policy. Thankfully, after the horrors of the Shoah came to light, Canadians then, as they are now, repented of their closed doors and closed minds and opened the borders to Jewish immigration. Most of our ancestors probably came over right after World War II, though in my case, several of my great-grandparents came before the war when pogroms became the norm and they saw the writing on the wall. Needless to say, they were lucky to find safety and security in Canada. But we all know that Canada wasn't necessarily a friendly place for Jews. Some neighborhoods were closed to us, country clubs, even the beach in Toronto displayed a sign that read, "No Jews or dogs allowed." And so as we formed our communities, our synagogues, our safe havens, our agencies to help Jews in distress, and eventually, with a lot of work and a lot of time, we have emerged from our ghettos and are now fully integrated in society. Interestingly, many have interpreted Canada's motto from the British North America Act of 1867, peace, order, and good government, in such a way that allows for different groups to thrive on their own, including Jews. But it took at least 100 years to fully get there. The historian David Weinfeld, in his article, Thin Canadian Culture, Thick Jewish Life, contends that the thin Canadian culture is what has supported the thriving of a rich, thick Jewish life here, in contrast to the United States, where almost everyone, regardless of religion or ethnicity, celebrates American Thanksgiving, for example. Weinfeld writes, "Thinking about this difference led me to realize something I liked about Canadian culture. It was thin enough to allow me to think of myself as Jewish first, Canadian second, where Jewish culture feels thick, durable, and substantive. Canadian culture feels shallow, flimsy, and unformed. Yet that is Canadian culture's greatest strength. By having a thin culture, Canada allows other cultures to feel at home. As Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in a 2015 interview, countries with a strong national identity, linguistic, religious, or cultural, are finding it a challenge to effectively integrate people from different backgrounds. In France, there is still a typical citizen and an atypical citizen. Canada doesn't have that dynamic. There is no core identity, no mainstream in Canada. There are shared values: openness, respect, compassion, willingness to work hard, to be there for each other, to search for equality and justice. Those qualities are what make us the first post-national state. Surely there is a Canadian culture: hockey, socialized medicine, the CBC, our national network, are three standouts. Sure, you can name more. But these three are not unique to Canada. And as Weinfeld points out, like most Canadians, Canadian Jews are hockey fans, benefit from single-payer health insurance, and watch the CBC, but the thin Canadian culture has minimal impact on who they are as Jews. This is a good thing for Canadian Jews who are invested in Jewish continuity, and perhaps it is why we feel so comfortable here and proud to be Canadian. And yet, we're not really from here. It is our adopted home. Our liturgy constantly refers us back to our true home, Jerusalem, the land of Israel, a land flowing with milk and honey. Many of us have traveled there, or perhaps studied there or lived there for prolonged amounts of time. Some in our congregation were born in Israel, of course. But for those of us who weren't born there, the connection to Israel needs to be cultivated. And our tradition does just that. Through the prayers we recite every day, the flags in our congregations, the generational pride that is handed down through stories and personal service. Many of us who have traveled to Israel will report a feeling of comfort, of being at home, even though we may never have set foot on the soil previously. There is some spiritual connection, something intangible that puts our soul at ease. And at the same time, Israel doesn't feel like home. Many of us don't speak modern Hebrew. My Mishnaic Hebrew is pretty good, but modern slang and expressions, forget it. The culture is definitely not like the Canadian one we're familiar with. We've all heard the image of the Israeli person being like the sabra fruit, prickly on the outside and sweet inside. It takes some doing to get through that prickly layer, and some of us might give up before getting there. But beyond the social, we don't have the same everyday life experiences as Israeli Jews. We don't live under constant threat of terror or war. We don't have mandatory army service. Most of us have not lost loved ones in any of those things. Our national experiences are different. And for the most part, our Jewish experiences are different as well. Imagine living in a place where the whole city shuts down on Yom Kippur. Buses stop running, traffic lights are off. Every shop and restaurant is closed. And then a couple of days later, sukkahs pop up everywhere you look. At homes, to be sure, but also restaurants have their patios transformed. Apartment buildings have special sukkah-friendly balconies. The sukkot extend up and out. Everywhere you look, there's greenery, decorations, and joy, and the children are off school for Sukkot break. Jerusalem is a magical place. I love being there, and I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but it's not my home. I'm guessing it's not yours either, since we're all here, living here together. And yes, we may have family members there, and yes, we like to go there whenever possible, and yes, we give generous donations and support important institutions and initiatives there, and we speak out about issues that concern Israel and lobby our politicians, and we value Israel being there for us, and that we have the right of return should we ever need it. Save for a few of us, we are not packing our bags and moving to Israel, even if it is our homeland. So where is our home? What is our home? In Talmud, the rabbis argue about what is a house or a home. for the purposes of affixing a mezuzah. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a structure is only considered a house if it's a home during both the summer and the rainy season. Otherwise, it's not a home and does not require a mezuzah. Abaye disagrees. He says, how could you suggest that the legal status of a residence occupied for only part of the year is not a home? He cites a verse from the prophet Amos that reads, V'hekiti veit hachoref al veit hakayitz. I will strike the winter house with the summer house, thereby showing that the text considers a seasonal house to be a home. So which type of house merits having a mezuzah? One rabbi says, only if it's a home that's occupied year-round, and another rabbi says it's okay if it's a seasonal one, your cottage is fine. Which leads me to believe that there are different definitions of home. Some are more permanent, some are less permanent, but as the rabbis are arguing, if you put the words of Torah on it, the mezuzah, which contains words of Torah inside it, that's what shows that it's a home. And that, I believe, is the answer to our question. Because Torah and Talmud, Midrash, and all of Jewish tradition is like a traveling home. Wherever we live, be it Canada, that is hospitable to our rich, thick culture, or the United States, France, Israel, or any other country in the world, wherever we live, we have our traveling, portable homeland. And when we immerse ourselves in it, when we affix it to the doorposts of our homes and declare that the values and traditions contained within it are the guiding principles of our lives, and when we make it our way of life and our primary identity, then we are home. The 11th century Spanish Rabbi Shmuel HaNagid said, I set the Talmud at the head of all my words as a birthplace and land of origin. There is a place where we belong. It's in the text. That is uniquely ours, not developed by any other people or founded by any other nation. It is our history, and it is our inheritance. Our traditions, our teachings, our values and stories, they belong to each of us. We get to find our place in them, no matter what language we speak or understand. And now that we've come back home again on this Yom Kippur, as we check in with our souls and return to our true selves and our better selves, we can go inside, roll out our mattresses, hang the drapes, paint the walls, and open the books. It's our home. And wherever we go, we take it with us. And we share it with others, and we invite them in. My friend and colleague, Rabbi Jonathan Blake, teaches the Torah begins with a bet, which of course is both a word and a pictograph representing a house, a bayit, because the Torah puts forth that the text itself is home. It's where it all begins, where we root ourselves, where we can always return. May we return to our home this year. May we return to our whole selves, at home, at ease, comfortable and safe within our portable homeland. May we continue to have pride in our country and contribute to its success, just as we continue to care for and love our spiritual homeland of Israel. And may the home that we carry with us wherever we go sustain us, nurture us, and give us peace. Amen.